Have you seen all these stories on your favorite network, Turner Classic Movies?
No, by the way, I haven't. I haven't been watching this for a while. What are they about?
Now about like the 18 movies that they're putting disclaimers on.
No, disclaimers about what?
You
About
know,
race?
about race, revisionist history, about sexism, about all that stuff.
I haven't seen that. It's interesting you mentioned it because I haven't watched it for a while. I don't even know what channel, Jeff, what channel is TCM on my TV in my bedroom? Do you know?
Good to see you, Gary.
See, I'm keeping my promise. I'm going to have a rush for every single day. This one's a little more obscure.
Can you
Sorry,
find
Gary?
out what TCM is on my TV in my
What's that?
bedroom?
What'd you say?
Thank you, sir.
I said I'm sticking to my Rush shirt every day. I'm going to do it before I die. I'm just going to wear Rush shirts for 25 years straight, just to annoy people.
And on that note, I want to welcome everybody to the world according to America's humble servant Benjamin Jeremy Stein. And of course, we're joined tonight by Gary Collins, who has one of the best podcasts on the net. Gary, tell people where they could find you, how they could find you, and all that fun jazz, because I always mess it up.
TheSimpleLifeNow.com. Podcast, everything's there. Just go there.
It's funny that sometimes we have a hard time with the simple. But welcome, Gary. Thanks for joining us on this fine Saturday night. And of course, I want to thank everybody that's listening on our YouTube channel, our YouTube feed, that will be commenting. I'll be reading it. We're going to have a fun Saturday night special with Ben Stein, writer, actor, provocateur, lover, sinner, saint, husband. But of course, he's America's humble servant and America's teacher. Now, Ben, you have the second Moderna shot, the booster shot, as they call it, a couple weeks ago, and you have been feeling mighty sick, to quote Grand Funk Railroad. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I had the first shot, and then I had only one response to that, which was that about 7 hours afterwards, I felt very high, like I'd been smoking marijuana. And that went away after a couple of hours. Then I had the second Moderna shot, and the woman at the pharmacy who gave me the shot said, "This one is going to be pretty hard. Be prepared." And so I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She said, "Well, you'll feel drowsy for a couple of days." So I had it. I didn't feel anything for a while, but my wife had it at the same moment. She, within minutes after getting home, felt violently ill, was throwing up like mad, had fever, chills, very bad dizziness, nausea. That night, I started feeling very sick. Not nausea, but very bad dizziness, fatigue, body aches, just felt terrible. I spoke to my doctor, and he said, "Oh, well, this will go away after a couple of days, but it doesn't always." Okay, about 3 days after that, I still felt pretty bad. I didn't feel like myself. I was extremely tired. I barely could get out of bed. I felt my thought processes were quite weak, and maybe they always are, but they were quite weak. I felt extremely, extremely tired. And I'm an old man. I'm allowed to feel tired, but I felt really, really tired. And now it's been from March 5th till now. I think, well, whatever today, it was today is Saturday. It was not last Monday, but the Monday before at 11:30 a.m. Since then, I have not felt like myself. My wife hasn't felt like herself. And the effects, if I may respectfully say so, are getting worse, not better. I feel extremely fatigued, dizzy, like I'm not thinking correctly, like I have a lot of negative thinking. And I just feel whacked by it. And my wife, who is the least complaining person in the world, never complains about anything, says she's never felt anything like it. Now, I am very well aware of the difference between statistics and data on the one hand, and anecdotes on the other. Mine is an anecdote. However, I see 3 doctors regularly. They all say they have patients who've suffered long-lasting fatigue and dizziness. So still, that's not data. We're talking about a small number of people compared with hundreds of thousands who presumably have been tested, or at least so they say. But something's going on, and I don't know what it is, but something's going on, and I don't feel right. I don't feel right. And I'm very glad I got the shot. I strongly urge everyone who can get the shot. I don't feel like I'm dying, but I strongly caution you, once you get the shot, be prepared to lie down and rest for a good long while.
So for the record, which I know you've been, feeling like crap for, for a couple of weeks and putting that all together, just for the record, because the Gateway pundit, you saw what they said, they included you with the anti-vaxxer type statement. You are not anti the vaccination.
No, I think people should definitely get the vaccination, but I think they should be prepared for quite a hard time for quite a while afterwards. I think this idea that the CDC is printing online that this will last on most a couple of days is just nonsense. I mean, I don't believe it. I don't believe that's really the result of their research. And I tend not to believe the government anyway, but something's wrong here.
But that hasn't always been the case, by the way, where you didn't believe the government.
No, that's true. That is very true. But I will say I'm a prodigious consumer of medicines, and I have often found that what is written up in the paper that comes with the medicine is just nonsense. It's just fairy tales.
Okay, so that was just for the record, and because a lot of people, Gary and Ben on Parler, are like, this shot has become political. Now, we discussed before the show, we believe COVID wasn't a hoax or anything like that. When we say COVID was made political to kill Trump, I don't think there's a question that they used it to politically just kneecap.
Absolutely.
But as you've said, the absolute miracle, could anybody out there that's listening think of Joe Biden putting all the resources together like President Trump did and getting every drug company, to pretty much get get in high gear and get this that quickly?
I don't think it was a miracle was the drug companies. That was part of the miracle. And we're very, very blessed to have the drug companies we do. But I think the real miracle was the FDA. The FDA has been standing on the tube of getting medicine to the public for years now. And their behavior in many cases has been disgraceful. Here at this time, they seem to have rushed. Did they rush too fast? I don't think so. I think they did a good job, and God bless them.
So Gary Collins, you being one of the biggest anti-big pharma people I've encountered, but for you actually, I want you to tell people why, and why you're not getting the vaccine, but why you're pro the vaccine for some people.
Well, I used to work for the FDA, so for me, I get confused. I got lumped in when I was natural health as an anti-vaxxer, and I pissed off a lot of people in the ancestral health and natural health world when I went, no, I'm a rational vaccinator. I believe there are too many vaccinations out there. Do I believe newborns get too many? Yes. Do I believe people should not get them? No. So my mom got it. My stepdad got it. They're in the demo risk group. Absolutely. I mean, I'm not in the risk category. I'm over 50, but I'm healthy. I don't have any underlying health conditions. So it doesn't make any sense when there's many other people that need to get it before me anyway. I'm not ruling out that I won't get it in the future, but I don't think I need to get it, if that makes sense.
Well, I am in the demographic that's supposed to get it, but I will say, I have lots and lots of weaknesses, many weaknesses. But I've never really experienced anything quite like this. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in doctors' offices. I've never experienced anything quite like this, and I know this is contrary to what you and I often discuss, and my point of view in these discussions. I just find it hard to believe that my three doctors, to be sure, very tiny percentage of all the doctors in the U.S. would say that a long-lasting dizziness and fatigue are not uncommon. I find hard to believe that they would be the only ones who had that experience.
No, you're not. A lot of people were posting on Parler, Ben, that they too had the Moderna vaccine and they too suffered the same ill side effects that you had. So you're not alone in this boat. But one of the things people brought up on Parler or other places where you're talking about anecdotal data is people bring up that 1,000 people have, over 900 or 1,000 people have died because of this vaccine. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't think people sometimes critically think before they bring up a number. Everything is just, oh, here's a number, let me shout it out. Let's just say 150 million people at this point across the world have been vaccinated. We don't know those 1,000 people have died, but think about that number in comparison. 1,000 people dying to 150 million people getting vaccinated. If that, I might be lowballing the number of vaccinations. It's this tiny little number.
But that's not. I mean, with the greatest possible respect, that's not really the number we should be looking at. The number we should be looking at is the number who have died from COVID and who have died from COVID without having any comorbidity factors. If they've died from COVID without having any comorbidity factors, those are the ones we should be looking at. How many of those people were saved by having the vaccine out there? We don't really know the answer to that question. I trust the big pharma enough to say, yes, go forward. Let's get everybody shot up. But I do not trust them enough when they say 1 or 2 days will do you in terms of getting cured from the side effects of the vaccine. I just cannot believe that my wifey and I, and one of the people who works for us, a very capable young Filipino man, would be having these same side effects if it were as safe as they say. I mean, I don't believe that my 3 very skeptical, intelligent, well-educated doctors would be saying this vaccine is no joke if it were a joke.
Right,
Yeah.
but at the same, right.
Well,
Go ahead,
and
Gary.
I guess the best example I'm thinking of, because I was trying to think, I've been in the government, I've gotten quite a few vaccinations and got a lot. And I remember I got double dosed with the yellow fever vaccination in the Navy, and that's a big no-no. And I didn't know that when the corpsman shot me up, and they went, "Wait, he's already had it." The head corpsman went, "Oh no."
Oh,
and,
boy.
And
oh,
I looked at him, and his eyeballs were huge. And I went, "Oh, what did you just kill me?" I felt awful for a week. I mean, couldn't get out of bed for 2 days. I was wrecked. And matter of fact, they were checking on me after they did it. So that told me there was some data saying you do not get this twice. And I got them within, I think, 2 weeks of each other. I got them really close. And so I felt lightheaded, nauseous, bad headache. Are those kind of the symptoms you and your wife have had, Ben?
Yeah, and I'm sorry to say, since my wife is the saint of saints, that hers have been worse than mine. She's had really, really bad ones, and she's a living, breathing goddess. Thank God we have a tremendous amount of living help. So she's, so to speak, protected. But it's the whole thing is I find very bewildering. I've had lots and lots of vaccines, and I never had anything quite like.
And by the way, for the record, I'm allergic to penicillin. I'm in those rare people, and I got double dosed by a dentist, giving me like a double thing of penicillin, and I literally couldn't get out of bed. I literally was flat on my back. And I think everybody's bodies react differently to things. Obviously, I'm allergic to Benadryl, oddly enough, too. And I'm allergic to a few other things. And these are horrible side effects, and they're horrible things. I don't want people to make things political. I don't want people to play armchair doctor. Ben and I are both in the 12-step world. And, we see oftentimes people dispensing medical opinions or medical doctors that haven't graduated from high school. We see people telling people not to take antidepressants or certain types of drugs because of certain reasons. And we're not doctors. And honestly, I understand people's fear of this. I understand that this is a new thing. It's been rushed, it's been brought to the market very quickly. This has only been a year, and we don't know the long-term side effects. We don't know anything. As Ben Stein constantly says, I don't know. We're doing the best we can with what we have right now. And this is no time to be screaming at people. This is the time. What I love about this show is that we have discourse. We don't always agree with each other. We don't always, or any of that stuff, but these are things we should be talking about.
Well, I'm reminded of my father's genius economics professor at the University of Chicago before World War II, Frank Knight, who said he wondered how long it would be before doctors cure more people than they kill. And this what's going on with vaccine is not in that category. Obviously, if there have been deaths from the vaccine, it's a very, 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 very small number. But could it bear more investigation? Yes.
But well, vaccinations, there are always deaths with the vaccination. I don't know of any vaccination that has a 0 death toll. It's the same as anything. It's the same as someone who eats a peanut and dies of anaphylactic shock. I mean, there's so many unknowns that I'm with Ben. I think if you're in the risk group, you're better to take it than not take it. That's my attitude. If I was,
by the way,
I would. Go ahead.
What I would like is a double shot of my baby's love.
No, but I mean, Gary, you're talking about
side effects to that.
Right. Gary, you're talking about my mom and dad. My dad had to have surgery last week. He's got a very weakened autoimmune system, and I'm grateful that he was vaccinated and he was able to get the surgery that he needed, because as we know, going to the hospital if you have an autoimmune issue with COVID going around, it could be a somewhat of a death sentence. So I am grateful that he was able to get whatever was in there to maybe protect him and allow him to get the surgery for something that could kill him. So that, but again, we're not doctors, we're not scientists. And the problem here is, and I want to get to this, how do we get?
Well, I actually am a doctor. I mean, they now have changed my degree from law school around to make me a doctor of laws.
Are you really?
Yeah, they changed it from bachelor of laws to doctor of laws, but I'm still the same dope I always was.
I love that. And on that note, if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to America's humble servant, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. I want to thank everybody that's in the YouTube chat. I am reading, I am looking at what you're saying. And one of the things, like I said, I love about this show is we could disagree, we could agree, we could get mad, but at the end of the day, we get along. And you could follow us on benstein.substack.com. That's for our newsletter, our podcast. Please, everybody, download the podcast. The World According to Ben Stein has been doing great. We could use your reviews. We love you guys, and we appreciate it. You could also find Ben on Parler at Ben Stein.
And also on the American Spectator.
Ben, I always bring up American Spectator, spectator.org. And of course, Gary Collins at simplelifenow.com. Thank you. I don't know why that's not simple for me. I want to welcome everybody back to The World According to Ben Stein. And Ben, you grew up at a time where you trusted the government, where there was a faith in government for the right, whether that was the right thing to do or not the right thing to do. You come from an era where you believed in government. You believe people were doing the right thing, even though now we know whether Tuskegee or certain things, the CIA doing certain nefarious things. But we have lost all faith in. If anybody's honest, Ben Stein, does anybody believe a word Dr. Fauci has to say?
Well, you use a very easy example. I mean, no, I don't believe a word Dr. Fauci
Ben,
has to say,
and
I don't know what he's doing there, and I don't know where he came from or anything about it, except he scares me. But I grew up when Dwight Eisenhower was president. He was president from 1953 to 1961. And that's Dwight Eisenhower. Yes, of course we trusted him. Kennedy, I don't know. Maybe he was a flashy guy. It sort of trusted him to pick out the right girls. Lyndon Johnson, we knew he manufactured that Tonkin Gulf incident. That was obvious right off the bat.
So my question though to you, Ben, is we are living in times where I'll ask Gary, how, as this person that served for 20 years, who lost faith, who lost his way in a sense, you stopped believing in the cause or whatever you want to call it, Gary. How the hell do we get back?
That is a tough question. Boy, that's a tough question.
Well, that's why we're here.
That is a tough one. I believe in the good men and women who work in the government. There's a lot of good people in there. They're fighting every day. The problem is they're being silenced and being pushed around by a bunch of idiots. Our leaders, I just call them a group of village idiots is what we have. And instead of thinking of the people in the country first, they're thinking of themselves, special interest groups, and their buddies. Until we get away from that and we get people in there who truly do it for the good service of the country for the people, nothing's going to change. We have a bunch of individuals in there who think of nothing but themselves.
But I think that's always been true of the human
Oh, yeah.
animal. I mean, the human animal is a selfish animal. But I would like to just go on for a moment, if I may. Right when I first started practicing law after I got out of law school, I went to work at the federal doctor, right? I went to work at the Federal Trade Commission, and that wasn't my first job, but that was a very early job. And the guy who assigned me my first job said, well, here's such and such a case about a fruit-flavored drink called High C. And we think they are comparing themselves nutritionally to orange juice, and we don't think they're as good as orange juice. So have a look at their ads, and then tell me what your game plan is for prosecuting them. So in those days, we had VHS. And so I looked at VHS, and I came back to him and said, sir, this doesn't even remotely compare this product with orange juice. So let's just pass and go on to the next thing. He said, no, we want to go after them. And I said, well, sir, these guys, it's going to cost them millions to defend this case. And there's no case. We shouldn't be persecuting them. And he said, F them. They're Coca-Cola Foods. They've got all the money in the world. Go ahead and do it. It's good trial practice for you. Well, I was weak and stupid and bad, and I pursued the case. It was a terrible, terrible case. We should never have done it. But I did it because I thought, well, this will be good trial practice. It'll help me advance my career in Washington. It was a terrible ethical mistake. I should not have done it. But the guy who pushed the case down my throat was making an even bigger ethical mistake. He had a lot of years of experience, and he was doing it anyway. This is what happens in Washington. It's people act in accordance with their own self-interest. It's a scary thing, but that's the way human beings are made.
Gary?
Oh, it is a survival mechanism for sure. No, it is. It is. It's a wiring in us to put ourselves first as a survival mechanism, right? But I think today, that's not an excuse. I mean, you go to serve the people to serve the people. There's no gray area in that, And I think part of the problem too is a lot of the wrong people get in politics because a lot of the good people who should be in politics want nothing to do with it because the system is so corrupt. Now,
and they don't get paid
I don't know
enough.
what the solution is.
Well, I mean, everybody's pushing himself forward. I know it's funny, when I worked at the White House, it was a very funny experience going to White House parties. Everybody in the room would be looking around to see if there's somebody more important to talk to than me. And then I started doing it too. So that's just the way life works. That is Washington and the whole world writ large.
I just want to get this image in my head. You were in the room and you were like talking to somebody, and at the same time your head was like this.
No. First, his head was swiveling around, and I thought, well, all right, I'll swivel my head around too. And that was the way everybody in the room was. Everybody in the room was doing that.
That's like a great image, like of a room of just swiveled head. It sort of sums up. It sort of sums up the house.
It was very funny. My boss, Dave Gergen, used to laughingly refer to the people at the White House as self-promoters, which was very, very funny because he's probably the best self-promoter I've ever met.
It's very funny. You guys were all a bunch of bobbleheads,
right?
But here's my question to you: we always like to romanticize and say it was better then? But I got to be honest. When I watch like videos, I'm such a wonk from the '80s, and I watch it like Tip O'Neill, and I watch different time. They look like they cared a little bit more than the people of today. They didn't.
No,
so that's just yeah.
Well, they didn't. I refer respectfully to anyone old enough to remember a columnist named Drew Pearson. He was a very, very successful columnist. He was just blasting the hell out of the congressmen and senators of the United States for self-dealing and self-promotion, just day after day after day. How did Lyndon Johnson, who was a senator from Texas with a salary of $12,500 a year, wind up with $100 million before he even became vice president? How did that, before he became a U.S. senator, how did that happen?
How does Maxine Waters afford to live in Hancock Park?
Maxine Waters is a special case. so horrible as a human being that she really cannot be compared with anyone else. But by the way, that's just my opinion. For all I know, better people than I am think that she's a wonderful person.
Yeah, I don't I would have a hard time
Maxine
finding that. Sorry, Gary?
Yeah, no.
Try finding
No,
them.
I said
Gary.
Maxine Waters is an awful person.
Yeah, you're having a
But
bit of
other people may think that she's a great person.
But you've got to remember though, back then, I mean, look at Al Gore. He was so concerned with people communicating, he created the internet all by himself.
And by the way,
Gary
is having some technical issues Saturday night where he lives.
Saturday Night Fever.
I am.
Is people tend to be watching a lot of stuff on the internet in the RVs around him. So we apologize for Gary's bad thing. But Ben, I want to ask you a question. Joe Biden had a press conference today, and we're getting to the point. Remember when Trump first got into office and everybody was, was questioning his mental acuity, and he had that test, right? The White House doctor gave him the test. I mean, Joe Biden today was on stage pretty much. You didn't get to see it. Was pretty much mumbling after the Senate passed the stimulus bill. And to quote, like I always love quoting my mother, a blind man in a dark room could see he doesn't have his faculties. The question is, do we want to get him tested and have Kamala Harris as the president? I mean, it's a lose-lose. I mean, let's keep Uncle, Grandpa senile or Grandpa, whatever in there, as opposed to having this radical, crazy nut job as our president.
Well, I don't know if I would call her a radical, crazy nut job. I don't like her, but I don't know if I'd call her crazy.
I did, not you.
Okay, well, God bless you. But let's go. Human beings are human beings. They're selfish. They're self-obsessed. The ethics are something they talk about a lot, but rarely abide by. And I might add that applies to me too. I do very many unethical things all the time. I'm ashamed of them, but I do them anyway. And that's just the nature of human beings.
Gary, how's your internet now?
Is it better?
It's great. It's rocking and rolling. It's rocking and rolling.
Oh, now
rocking and rolling.
You just said just as I said that, it says your internet is unstable. And so hopefully you guys can hear me. I switched over. I had to switch over.
Beverly Hills. We're very stable here in Beverly Hills. We're very stable.
Yeah,
let's talk about the economy. Jenna, can we talk about the economy?
Yeah, go ahead.
Almost every day as I walk through my house, I see the day worker has picked up the newspapers and arranged them neatly on the kitchen table. And almost every day now, there's a story about how the economy is so strong and it's about to just explode with wild prosperity as COVID has gotten under control. Never do they give Trump credit for that. And yet, as an economist, we don't know that much as economists. We know that if someone was inaugurated on January 20th and the economy is showing severe signs of severe growth and even strains in terms of inflation by March 4th or 5th, that's not the new president's doing. That's the old president's doing, and the effects are being pushed forward. Nobody in the newspapers ever gives Trump credit for this. Nobody ever does. And yet, obviously, Trump's economic stimulus and economic protection plans during the COVID and during the beginning and middle and what we hope is going to be close to the end of the COVID were incredibly effective. Why doesn't he get some credit for that? He will get credit from us. He will get credit on some other entities. But by and large, the news magazines treat him like a pariah, as if he were purposely trying to ruin the economy. But he did an incredibly good job. Any economist in America would say, unless he's being held at gunpoint by the Democratic National Committee, would say, Trump did exactly what he's supposed to do. Let's give the guy some credit.
Not Paul Krugman, we could say that, but Gary, yeah.
Well, Kamala Harris is obviously the person who is instrumental in this great economy, since she is running the country. But, the thing is, I see it because I'm building a house right now, and inflation it's not coming, it's here. Just in the last couple months, materials have doubled. Not just little, doubled that quickly. Inflation is here. And I don't see anyone talking about that. And once that $1.9 trillion bill goes fully through, they dump that money into, well, they won't, because only 10% of it's for COVID. It's a COVID bill. Ben, was I not paying attention in math class?
Yeah,
Did I miss it?
Mr. Trump had the economy on the path to a rapid, solid, sustainable recovery without huge amounts of inflation. Now we're being pushed into a recovery that is too fast and is going to have inflation, and people are not going to like it when they have inflation. The last time we had severe inflation was quite a while ago. People have forgotten what it's like. It's very upsetting to have severe inflation. For me, it's a little tiny bit good because I own some property, so that'll go up. But for most people, it's not good at all. It's gonna hurt like hell.
Yeah, I'm trying.
I mean,
I'm gonna be.
I agree. Somebody just brought this up in the chat. Milk, eggs, like I brought up in the past, soda. Going to the gas station, filling up your tank for $60. In your case, Ben, probably close to $140. If you have an SUV right now in the state of California, your gasoline, I don't care how much of a stimulus check you're getting, it's 3 tanks of gas.
I know. We had people like Mr. Mnuchin and Larry Kudlow who understood something about economics. And the present people running the society, the economy, are intelligent people. Mr. Powell, head of the Federal Reserve, is a very intelligent, careful guy. But this idea of just dumping incredible amounts of money into an economy that's already rapidly recovering is not just like pouring gasoline on a fire to put out the fire. It's pouring gasoline on a fire to put out the fire. It is that, and somebody should pay attention to it.
Well, the problem too is they're doing it and they're not even unleashing all the money. So I get what the game is. They're passing these monstrous bills and they're setting a precedent. We've already seen it. There's going to be another one coming in about 6 months. I'll guarantee it. So what they're doing is they're getting this money liquid. They're not even putting it where it's supposed to go because they're not spending it. So they're keeping it liquid because they're about ready just to transfer wealth to all their buddies, all their big business. It's going to happen. And it's going to cause, as they do it, even because they're dumping big chunks in, I'm no economist though, Ben, but I think they're doing it because they're basically creating a slush fund of corruption. That's what.
Well, that is what they do. I mean, votes are for sale in modern day America by both parties. Both parties want to bid on them, but the Democrats just are much more, what should I say, wild riverboat gamblers. People are not going to like it when they go to the bank to finance their house or go wherever they go to refinance their house, and instead of being told that the interest rate is 2.5 or 3.5 or 4%, they're told it's 9%. They're going to say, what happened? And I can tell you what happened. Pouring gasoline on a fire to try to put out the fire doesn't put out the fire.
You guys both bring up great points, and I actually want to get back to this in a second. But if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein, economist, author,
lover,
doctor. You're a doctor.
Now I'm a doctor, and I will be seeing patients. I'll be seeing patients. I'll see the patient first, and then I'll decide whether I'll see the patient.
You and Jill Biden are both doctors.
Jill Biden and I are going to open an office together. Brain surgery.
I want to thank everybody that's listening in the chat. I want to thank you for all your comments. I want to remind everybody to go. Gary, where do they go for you?
thesimplelifenow.com.
And of course, you can find Ben at spectator.org and on Parler at Ben Stein. And don't forget to download our podcast, The World According to Ben Stein, wherever podcasts could be downloaded and streamed. And I'm not sure how the economy could put me in a good mood talking about it, but it does with Ben Stein because he makes economics seem fun and understandable.
You're very kind. Thank you, sir.
You do, but you do that more than any economist. You are like, and I'm not just saying that to blow smoke up your sadly COVID, sickness right now, but you're able to speak economy that people could understand. And one of the things we're just talking about is this stimulus bill. And when we kept on hearing Trump say that they're going to put money towards cities that are broke, that don't deserve the money, that have devastated their states, I mean, and voila, who's getting the bailouts? States that made horrific decisions during COVID, that shut down like mad. They're the ones, and we're bailing them out. And it's a COVID bill, Ben, and it's just pathetically scary.
May I give you the economist explanation of that? The
Yes.
best things in life are free, but you can give them to the birds and bees. I want money. That's what I want. Anyway, we economists like to sing. Not everyone realizes that.
Did you and Milton Friedman have a band?
No, but my father used to play the clarinet, and he was very good at it.
That would be awesome, though, if you and Milton Friedman, because you knew Milton Friedman.
Very well.
And how many people can say they knew Milton Friedman? It's just wild. Or how many people can say they knew your father? Even wilder. But I want to get back to what Gary's talking about. This is one big, massive slush fund. I've never seen a person, and I'm not, this isn't in a sycophant sort of way. Donald Trump, in a sense, was a prophet, because almost everything he would say ended up being the truth. Almost everything he would say, he would talk about, you'll see that they were spying on my campaign. No, nobody was spying. All of a sudden that came true. Almost every prediction he had came true. And one of the worst predictions he had right now is that we're putting $1.9 trillion towards cities, that, or towards states that are just going to ruin it. I mean, it's mind-boggling, Ben.
It is mind-boggling that people think that there's 1.9 trillion floating around somewhere they can just take and spend it. Look, we are broke as a country. We're broke. We have a huge debt. We're never going to be able to pay it off. And yet we're somehow going to be borrowing another 1.9 trillion. And as Gary so aptly says, we'll borrow more after that. My granddaughter, sweet, adorable Coco, adorable child, she's going to be inheriting a bankrupt country. It's not right for this to happen, but the Democrats are doing it. And I have to say, the Republicans did too much of it too. There used to be, you asked how it used to be, we used to have some sense of responsibility about our children and grandchildren. That's long gone. But it started, I'm sorry to say, with Mr. Reagan, when he said, how is supply side going to affect posterity? Isn't it going to hurt posterity? And Reagan, no dummy, said, well, what has posterity ever done for me? And I hate to say it because I love Reagan so much, but he was absolutely right.
And by the way, your granddaughter, sadly, isn't just going to inherit a bankrupt fiscally country, spiritually and morally bankrupt country at the same time.
I'm afraid so.
But Gary, this is what I love about your takes on things, because you also simplify things, and you simplify things in a way that, you
know so much. Try not so.
I do say too much. I'll stop. I will stop saying So Gary,
yes,
on what Ben just said.
Well,
yes,
I want Ben's opinion on this too, because this is what I foresee happening. As somebody whose side business has been real estate for over 2 decades, that what I'm seeing right now is, as the money dumps in, right now we're having a shortage not only in materials but laborers as well. Because
that's going to be a really bad situation. Be prepared. That's going to be really bad.
And so what I predict what's going to happen as interest rates creep up, they're probably going to I'm guessing they're going to keep interest rates low.
How can they, sir,
but,
with respect, at a certain point, they can't. At a certain point, the people in the bond market bid up interest rates, and the bond market vigilantes will bid up interest rates, and all this whole glorious structure will come crumbling down.
Well, and it's going to happen sooner than later, because right now it's taking, instead of taking 6 to 8 months to build a house, it's taking 8 to 14 months to build a house. So all these people who are jumping out right now, and the average cost of a new constructed home is over $400,000. That's ridiculous. So these people who are going out and buying these houses, the interest rates are going to shoot up before they can finance it, before it's done. They're not going to be able to afford that house. So I see what they're doing also causing a massive real estate bubble again, because by the time all this inflation the hens come to roost, or roosters come to roost, whatever.
Chickens come home to roost.
There we go. Chickens come out to roost. that this is going to hit and it's going to crush. It's going to be a double whammy. You're going to see shooting inflation, then you're going to see the housing market crash. Then you're already going to have all these people who have not gotten off unemployment, who are starting to get off unemployment to go look for jobs now because now it's run out. It's a perfect storm for a really big economic disaster. That's
Well, I don't know if it's going to be a disaster, but inflation is already baked into the cake, and I think a national bankruptcy is baked into the cake. And I must say, the idea that the United States of America screwed up its finances so badly that it's going to have to go into bankruptcy when it's the richest country in the world by a very, very large margin, it's just unbelievable. Wait, I'm so glad we got to this. The other day, this is what we've Jude and I have mentioned this before, and I respectfully want to mention it again. We mentioned it before. I want to mention it again. There's some a-hole named Jeff Daniels, I think that's his name, who was on TV the other day saying America was not the greatest nation in the world because we had very high rates of incarceration, very high rates of illiteracy, very high rates of teen pregnancy, very high rates of single-parent households, very high rates of killing, very high rates of violence of all kinds. And then he was pointing out that this was because America was such a racist country. It's not because America is such a racist country. America isn't a racist country. It's because we have two Americas. We've talked about this on this show before. It's worth talking about again. We have two Americas, a white America and a black America. The black America tends to be, not always, many of them are incredibly wonderful, fine, super duper people, but it tends to be more violent, more likely to commit crimes, more likely to be incarcerated, more likely to have single parent families. Nobody ever talks about that in a clear, honest way. Instead, there's this endless ass kissing of the black community to get their votes. No one ever tells the truth about what a crisis they're in, and something has to be done about it, and they have to do it themselves. Judah talked a minute ago about America becoming a godless, spiritually bankrupt country. It used to be that within the black community, what held it together was the black churches, and they were incredibly wonderful things. That could happen again. Let's see it happen again. Let's see America turn to God again. That would not be a bad thing. That would be a miracle. That would save America.
Yeah, well, yeah. Once you lose faith and you don't have something to believe in, that's when the wheels come off. And I agree with you, Ben. Like I said, I'm not a religious guy. I'm a spiritual guy. It's not a cop-out. I believe in a higher being. I hope there's another journey for me in an afterlife. But like I've always said, if the worst thing you're ever going to do in life is believe in a religion or be a person of faith, I'm totally fine with that. I'm okay with that. I'm not going to fault you for that. And I agree with you. A big part of it too in the black communities is a lack of a nuclear family and a lack
huge
of
part of
education.
Huge part of it. It's interesting. The people on TV that are trying to appeal to the black vote say, "Oh, there's a certain point at which the black father has to talk to his son and say, we have to have this talk that if any time a policeman comes up to you, he's going to kill you." That's just so horrifying. Maybe they should have a talk with their children about behaving really carefully around police. I don't doubt that that's a good thing to do. And I don't doubt that there are many police who tend to be violent around black people. I don't doubt that at all. But the real talk that needs to be had is, if you knock up your girlfriend, marry her. If you go to school, do your homework. If you get a job, stay on the job. Don't quit. If you start to smoke cigarettes, don't let that turn into smoking crack. Yes, we want people to behave respectfully towards blacks at every possible opportunity. But we also want blacks to behave respectfully towards themselves and towards their wives and towards their children.
Well, in the baiting, and Biden's done this several times, and he's given this talking point about how lucky him and his daughter is that his daughter, when she gets pulled over by a violent police officer because they attack all black people, according to them, that she doesn't have to worry about keeping her hands on the steering wheel or saying yes sir, no sir. And I went, that is the biggest crock of BS I've ever heard. I was in law enforcement. When I get pulled over, I put my hands on the steering wheel. I keep my head forward. I say yes sir, no sir. You know why? Because I know what their job is like and I know what they're going through. You start acting like a jackass running your hands around, bobbing around in your car, you're going to get shot. And you start obeying orders, you're probably going to get roughed up or put to the ground, because people have no idea what they're talking about. And
you guys both raise great points. I'm from New York.
Yeah, well, his daughter doesn't have to put her hands on the steering wheel anymore because they're in friggin' some of the most richest places in the world. Those aren't cops. Those are people who go around doing patrol. You know, they're guards for the gated communities. I mean, that is so insulting when he says that his daughter.
But that's all they do. That's what the Democrats do, Gary, is insult the police. They do, that's their job. They insult police.
I'm going to give people a little teaching lesson. If you get pulled over, keep your hands on the steering wheel, look straight ahead, and say yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am.
Absolutely.
I don't care who you are. That's how you should act. And if you go, I don't have to act.
I have to do that even here in Beverly Hills. I have to do that. I'm an old man, an old harmless man, and I have to do that even here in Beverly Hills.
No, you know what? I got to say, Gary, that was the most cohesive way of sort of simplifying that type of situation. As being from New York, you drive, and my family now lives in Jersey. There is nothing more frightening when you're driving on the Garden State Parkway or the Turnpike, and all of a sudden that light flashes out of the woods. And it's the New Jersey State Trooper, who literally do dress like stormtroopers. And you just sit there with like this. I don't care what color you are, what religion you are praying that they are terrifying figures. And you know what? That's not a bad thing sometimes, to have people in our society that terrify you into not breaking the law and driving 100 miles an hour.
Absolutely right. You are so right. You are so right. I want the police to be my friends. And I've had many experiences where the police have been my friends. But I would like the ordinary citizen to be scared of the police and not even think of pulling out a gun or a knife or doing anything dangerous with these around police. There used to be this great show on called Police. What was it called? Police?
Cops.
It just still honors to be called off. I think
it got canceled. I'm not sure if they brought it back.
Yeah.
I hope they brought it back. You really see what the life of a policeman is like, or policewoman. It's really, really scary. Yes, behave extremely respectfully for them. My wifey and I say prayers every night for the police and the sheriff's deputies. We need those men and women desperately. And yes, we have to behave respectfully towards them. Yes.
And you want to talk about politicians not making enough money, which they do on the side. They make plenty. Cops don't make anything. And here's another thing that I tell people, because a couple people, I've talked about use of force when it was, during the Floyd incident and all that. But it kind of parlayed into the guy at Wendy's who was completely wrong. That was 100% justifiable. And me and a cop from Colorado did a long podcast on use of force. And people said, well, if a cop comes up to me and I'm not doing anything wrong, puts hands on me and takes me to the ground, I'm going to fight back. And I went,
oh, great.
I went, time out. I go, Here's the deal. I go, even if you're right, you're wrong. Obey, go to the ground, follow the commands. There's one thing what's better about that is you want to live. If you start to fight, you start to run your mouth, there's a good chance you might die. And even though you were right, you're dead. That doesn't matter. Go with it. And I know people don't want to hear this, but you know what? There is a legal system in which to sue that officer.
You also brought up a good...
comply, follow orders.
You bring up a great point.
Yeah.
I want to get to this in a second, because you bring up an amazing point that really gets overlooked, Gary, and I want to get to Ben, both of your perspective in a second. But if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Dr. Benjamin Jeremy Stein, who's starting a practice with Dr. Jill Biden called, we'll figure out a good name for it. But you can follow Gary.
Anal exams only. There you go.
No. Brain surgery only. Brain surgery only.
You can find Gary at thesimplelife.com. You could also find Ben Stein on Parler at Ben Stein, and of course spectator.org. But don't forget to download all our episodes. This will be up at about 10 a.m., 11 a.m. tomorrow. The World According to Ben Stein. Follow us on YouTube. Give us those 5-star ratings, please, on our Apple podcast. It means the world to us. I want to welcome everybody back to The World According to Ben Stein. You both, before this, 30 seconds ago raised brilliant points. Okay, so let's chronologically go back in time. Let's go to the 30s or the 20s when it wasn't an easy time to be a Jew in America, right? It wasn't. There have been times for a lot of cultures that it wasn't an easy time to be what you are, whether you were Irish and you were a Mick, or you were an Italian and you were a Dago, or whatever it was, and you got treated really harshly. But you sucked it up, you took it, you worked for a better future for your family, and you grew up. You grew up really fast in this country. And Mexicans have that same mentality, Koreans have that same mentality. What is it? And I call me the biggest racist about the African, the Black community, that they haven't grown up. They haven't taken that next level of responsibility like every other culture has that came to this country that got the shit kicked out of them.
Because one, no other group had been as mistreated in America as the blacks. Blacks were mistreated on a scale that makes the mistreatment of all the other groups trivial. That's one. Two, there was something happened to the culture in the Black community in the 50s and 60s in which people were taught to be violent and stupid instead of working hard and getting good grades. And they were applauded by cultural figures and political figures for being stupid and violent. That was a terrible disgrace to them. Great men like my former employer, Jesse Jackson, said, no, go to work, study hard, learn a trade. But too many others, like that horrible person who used to be real fat and now he's real thin. I forget his name. What's his name?
I got the face right.
The worst.
Al Sharpton.
I was going to say, some would say the worst person in the world. I say a dedicated African-American freedom fighter. People like him said, no, you're being oppressed. Don't feel you have to work hard. Whitey owes you a living. Whitey will do it if I make him feel uncomfortable enough. You don't have to work. Jesse Jackson was a lot smarter and more responsible than that.
What's so funny, by the way, that you bring up his name is Gary and I were talking about, everyone had a little humor to this too, but we were talking about how Howard Stern used to be just the greatest thing to listen to until he became politically correct, and how his interviews used to be really great. And I brought up to Gary how Howard Stern years ago, he had a show on Saturday nights, and one of the episodes was when Al Sharpton had gotten stabbed. And they did a death watch outside of his hospital with Stuttering John being the reporter. And it was basically like, is he close to being dead? It was that's how hated Al Sharpton was. And the media, the media organizations propped this jackass who has caused more damage to New York City and to the world and to the Black community with Tawana Brawley, the Crown Heights riots. I mean, this guy has literally caused death and carnage, and he's speaking at these funerals. I mean, a couple of years ago, I remember looking on stage and seeing it was Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, who called New York City Hymietown, not at the biggest low, and Farrakhan. And I remember looking on stage and thinking, these are the three civil rights leaders at this moment. It's like the murderers row of anti-Semites on stage right now, and the media doesn't give a crap, Ben. And as long as these three are allowed to be in control of the Black community, they're screwed.
Well, with respect, I've said now for the 1,000th time, I have high regard for Jesse Jackson. I do have high regard for Jesse Jackson. Farrakhan, obviously a Nazi. I mean, he boasts about being a Nazi, and that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. Maybe he's a great guy. But Al Sharpton, just the lowest of the low. But of course, the media can never, ever say that. The media has got its nose so far up Al Sharpton's ass. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, what the Black community is suffering from is systemic lack of education. Have you noticed where most neighborhoods or most communities have not opened up their school systems? It's the poorest school systems in the country. These kids need school more than any other demographic, period, to get ahead.
They won't get it. It doesn't matter. They won't get it. Sit my former home where I was born, Washington, D.C. spends the most per pupil of any city in America. Their results are catastrophic. The students won't learn because it's considered to be anti-Black and pretending to be white if you study.
Oh yeah, yeah, you'll be made fun of, and that's the thing I've always said. The equalizer for all this, and it's such a red herring. They always throw you off the scent. It's not about Black versus white. It's the rich versus the poor, and I mean the rich of the crony capitalism system. The equalizer is always education, and that's why in these neighborhoods the education is so bad, because they don't want things to be equal. Because once things are equal, these kids and these people are going to be able to vote by being intelligent, be able to come to rational conclusions. They don't want that.
With the greatest respect to you, Gary, I love you, and I love your trailer or whatever that wonderful thing is. with all due respect to you, the Black community has been brainwashed by itself, by I don't know who else, but into thinking that there's something wrong with studying and working and learning discipline. It's really sad, but they have brainwashed themselves. I mean, I don't know what to say. They have done it to themselves. It's really heart-rending, as my wife would say, but they have done it to themselves. America shovels money into the schools in these Black communities. The Black kids refuse to learn. They could learn. When I was doing Win Ben Stein's Money, I played against a number of Black contestants who are startlingly smart, startlingly well-informed, really, really scarily smart. So it can be done. It's not that there's something genetic in them that keeps them from doing it. The culture tells them not to do it.
No, well, and I agree with you. Ben, I 100% agree with you. But part of the education system, though, is teaching you how to come to rational conclusions. Rational conclusion would say, well, if I want to get ahead and I want to do better, well, I need to get educated. I need to learn more. I need to work harder. And with the riots and all the things you saw with Black Lives Matter and Antifa, you'd always see these Black kids. And I'd always say this, I go, those Black kids breaking into those stores are wearing way nicer clothes than I had as a poor white kid living in a trailer. I never had
nicer clothes than I had as a person living in a mansion in Beverly Hills.
Well, what's funny that you
bring $100 sneakers. I couldn't afford $2 sneakers when I was in high school. I was poor.
But what's funny is you remember like Occupy Wall Street, everybody, like I remember, everybody on their iPhones and their iPads and their Macs complaining about Wall Street. And I remember thinking that, I mean, the irony that is lost on them, that these are the people that are doing this. But both of you raised great points, but somebody actually brought this up in chat, and I want to ask you this because we're running out of time. But we, as a kid, Ben, in school, and Gary, we didn't have this as much. I went to a different sort of a school, but you guys had shop. You guys had, where you could build cars, or whatever those classes were called. I don't even know what
it was called. Auto shop.
Auto shop, and you were taught, and they taught you to learn a trade. Yeah. This isn't happening in our schools right now. We have schools that are ending at 3:00 in the afternoon.
Well, that's when my school ended. What's wrong with that?
Ben, different times. Your mom was home when you got home from school.
Yeah, would you think that was good?
It was a different time. But the fact that there aren't skills that like you bring up with Jesse Jackson, that skills aren't being taught.
Because you're taught you're a loser if you do that. If you learn how to sing and dance and do rap music, you get to be a multimillionaire. If you're doing shop class, you get to barely earn a living. But that's not true. Auto workers are paid very well. And people who can repair cars are paid very well. Very few people who start out being rappers get to be successful rappers. Everybody who learns auto shop gets to be a middle-class person. Everybody. And that's what Jesse Jackson said. And Jesse Jackson was right. Jesse, you can say all you want about that idiot Farrakhan or that idiot Sharpton. Jesse Jackson is a smart, impressive gentleman.
To you. You also have met him firsthand and you know him firsthand. So, the way he came across to you could be different.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I've never met.
to the way he comes across to the rest of us. And when he calls New York Hymie Town and he does certain things, some of us take offense to it a little more than you might, having met him personally. So, but, you know, I mean, these are, you know, the biggest thing, Ben and Gary, is that anybody that's listening to us tonight that's not a conservative or that doesn't have a brain or an open mind is going to look at us and say, how could you three be talking about race? And that's where the biggest issue, I think, lies right now, is that how can we talk about race? We're not allowed to. Well, I'm a Jew. I'm allowed to talk about whatever I want. Ben, he's a genius, and he's Jew, and he's everything else, and he's allowed to talk about whatever he wants. And Gary grew up in abject poverty, being white. So that's what gives him the right to talk about these sort of issues. You're allowed to talk about things, Ben, Gary, even if you aren't of that color, even if you aren't, that's just my humble opinion. It used to be the knock on certain things. How can you question certain things if you're not a part of that thing? Well, that's what's called conversation, isn't it?
That's what's called being an American.
Yeah. I mean, unless I'm incorrect. And again, we are running out of time. Gary, can you, and this conversation, Ben, could go on forever, but I know you need to go and cook for your wife. And somebody just asked how you're feeling. So if you could give one last status update, Ben, on how you're feeling.
I still feel quite dizzy and disoriented, and but I will rest. And tomorrow I'm going to have a ride out into a beautiful area, and I will lie by my pool and let the sun and vitamin. What is it? What do you get from the sun? Vitamin D, something like that. Let the vitamin D pound my body into health.
And on that note, I want to thank everybody for listening to us in the chat. I want to remind everybody to please download the show on Apple Podcasts or wherever you could download the show. Give us a 5-star review. Even if you listen to this show and you watch us live, we beg of you to please, we're humbly,
please
download the show. And you can find Gary at The Simple Life, at thesimplelifenow.com.
Please,
Gary, I messed it up, right?
Please.
No, you're good. I got you.
thesimplelifenow.com, right?
Please.
Yes.
Hardest working man in show business.
And of course, you can find Ben at spectator.org and also on Parler at Ben Stein. So Ben is feeling well enough, I think, to sing us out. So please, Ben, sing us out.
Please, 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 please. That's all I can sing about.
That's the best song you have for a Saturday night, not like the Temptations Ball of Confusion.
Saturday night, and I just got paid. I fool about my money, don't try to save. My heart say go, go, have a ball, cause Saturday night, baby, I'm feeling fine. I'm gonna rip it up. I'm gonna rock it up. I'm gonna rip it up and ball tonight.
Hey. And there we are. I want to thank everybody. We will see you Tuesday night. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching to The World According to Ben Stein. We were truly honored and humbled by every single one of you. So thank you.